Microsoft side, we have two PTSs, people that are responsible for the product here. Trevor Moore, longtime NAV and visual user, will be presenting in about 3 minutes. Gives me a great honor to introduce Trev. And Nelson Lopes, who's many of you will remember, is the CRM PTS, and he'll be on at about 9:30 this morning. So that's your Microsoft team presenting today. So it's pretty busy agenda. Customers with us around the country, on the web or in the room. So I want to introduce you and thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. We're doing this a little different. We are in a room in Mississauga presenting live to customers and prospects and staff. We're also over the web. Interesting, it's full over the web, and we have about 10 of us here in the Microsoft office, so this shows you how popular these webinar presentations are. Giving you a bit of a flavor for where we are and what it looks like. For those that are new to Vox, we've twice been the Worldwide Partner of the Year. We're a former Infor Worldwide Partner of the Year and have about 1,000 installations across Canada. So we have quite a few of them. This is the agenda for NAV First Thing Now, and I'm going to be passing to Trevor Moore, our keynote speaker for Dynamics 2015.
Thank you, Jim.
I'm going to pass to you now, Trev.
Good morning, everybody. So this morning, I'm going to take you through, I know we have a bit of a mix of attendees, some people who use NAV today, some people who are considering using NAV. So I'm going to take you through, very quickly, quick overview of Dynamics NAV, and then I'm going to drill right into some of the key new features in the latest release, which is Dynamics NAV 2015. So I think probably the first thing that's worth covering today is a bit of the Microsoft vision for what we're doing with all of our products. And basically, we want the user's digital work and life experience to be at the center of everything we do, which means dealing with people's dual use. People use technology for home, for getting their news, for getting their TV, for getting their work information. We want to make sure that our products are available across all of those platforms and on all of those devices. So in a mobile-first, cloud-first era, we deliver the cloud for business. So we have our productivity tools. Many of you may be familiar with those, Office, Windows. We have our platform tools, our servers that serve up that infrastructure. And then finally, we have our business apps. Dynamics NAV is really at the center of that from an ERP point of view. So Microsoft Dynamics NAV can be entirely cloud-based. It can be operated through apps or through web pages, and you see that today. And it's part of that strategy to make sure that we address a mobile-first world where more and more workers are mobile, accessing information from multiple types of devices, their personal devices, their work devices, through their laptops, their desktops, their tablets, their mobile phones. We can serve up information with Dynamics NAV across all those platforms. So I'm going to go ahead and head into Dynamics NAV. And I'm going to give a quick overview here. So this is my typical Windows 8 start screen. I have some key shortcuts I've put together for Dynamics NAV. So let's say in a typical working day, if I'm looking to find information on my role, NAV is role-based. So based on your user credentials, your portal into the application is based on a particular role or what you do day to day. I have several of the roles served up here. Let's take a look at a sales order entry screen. So here on my sales order entry screen, I've got my key functions that I do day to day that I have access to. I've got some KPIs. You'll notice the colors at the top of these bars, whether the indicator is red, yellow, or green. So I've got no partially shipped orders. That's a good thing. It's marked as green. I've got access to some of my key reports, and I can drill into those reports. Then I have my menu items. So there are several roles predefined in the system. Users can create their own roles. So it's a full cycle ERP system. We can take a look at, for instance, a different role, which would be the production planner. And you'll see the concept of the role page is the same. His view is quite different. He's looking at his planned orders, his released production orders. He's maybe looking at his bombs that he's in the process of building, and some of his key reports. So with that short overview, I'm going to go into some of the key new features in Dynamics Nav. So I think probably one of the most important is reporting. So traditionally, Microsoft Dynamics Nav has used SQL Server Reporting Service for reports. There's two important changes. The first is you can now use SQL Server Reporting Service, but rather than using Visual Studio to develop your reports, you can do it with an application that's much more similar to something like maybe a Crystal Reports you've used in the past, a bit more of a GUI interface for end users. The second is we can now do it with Word reports. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look at how we would build a report from scratch from a Word report in the new Dynamics Nav. So the first thing we would do is probably search in the search box. As I search through there, it gives me everything that starts with report SE. And what I'm looking for is report selection for sales. This will help me identify the report I'm currently using for different types of documents. Okay. So for instance, if I wanted to look at what I'm using as an order acknowledgement, I would click here and I see that I'm using report number 10075 for my sales order document. Okay. So now I can go to custom report, custom report layouts, and you'll see here right now I have no custom report set up in the system whatsoever. I'm going to go ahead and create a new one, and in this case I'm going to use 1306, and I'm going to say insert Word layout. I've got two choices. One is insert RDLC layout. That's really for SQL Server Reporting Services. You can use the report builder now, as I mentioned, rather than going to Visual Studio. I'm going to go ahead and insert a Word layout. And then what I need to do is I need to pick a report. So I'm going to use some kind of template. So I'm going to go into Word, and I'm going to say that I want to start a new document from a template. And I'm going to say I want, invoice. So here's an example. There's a template, and there's thousands and thousands of these templates, obviously, out in Office. There's a sales invoice Rust template. So I'm going to get ahead and open that, and I'm just going to save it somewhere temporarily. Okay, so what I've done is I've saved basically a blank template. Now I'm going to return here, and I'm going to say export layout. Oh, sorry, import layout. So I want to grab that template that I created. That's where I saved it. And now I'm going to say edit layout. What it's going to do is it's going to open Word for me. And you'll notice that it opened that template document I had. So I'm going to go to Developer here, and I'm going to go to XML Mapping Pane. And within here, I'll see one for Dynamics Nav. and that particular sales report. And what I've got here is a series of data that I can select. So let's say I want to put the company name and some of their address details.
Trev, can you hold on for a sec? We have people coming in from around the country on the web.
Sure.
For those that are just joining us, welcome on the World Wide Web. Trevor Moore, the PTS for Microsoft Dynamics NAV, is presenting right now. I'm sitting in the Mississauga office, and Trev is going through the first new feature in NAV 2015 where you can design your own reports. The agenda for today is we'll be doing NAV from 8 to 9. We'll be doing CRM from 9:15 to 10:15. And then we'll be doing visual to NAV conversions from 10:30 to noon. So those that are joining us on the web, thank you. We've had about 10 people come in since 8:05. So thank you for joining us. And Trev, back to you.
Thank you. So I'm only going to insert a few fields here, but I do want to show you the line items. I'm basically going to delete all the rows except for one. And then inside that row, if I go a little further on the data that's come from NAV, I'll see that I've got lines here. And if I right-click on it, I can insert what's called a repeating line. So it'll automatically create the right amount of lines based on the data in the document that you're printing. You know, your sales order has 4 lines, it's going to insert 4 lines. And then I can take data from the line, like the line quantity, and I can insert that into my Word template. Maybe I'll put the item number. Maybe I'll description. And I think you get the idea. At that point, I'm going to save that. And I've got a choice here whether I want to bring that back in, which I'm now doing. And now I can test the report from here. So if I do run report, you'll see that it's going to use that format from our Word, and the data from the document is actually being inserted. I've got the quantities, the descriptions, and I've got the company address from the database. Okay? So it's very easy, very flexible, very easy to design the reports. Now, when you actually run the reports, you can choose to print them as a PDF or print them as a Word document or print them as an Excel, different formats based off that design. Okay? So you can now actually go out to the store in Microsoft Word, pick any sort of template report you see there, and add your NAV data to it and use it as a base. We could also do the same thing, edit layout, if we inserted an override for a SQL Server report using Report Builder to edit it, which is a much more graphical, simpler interface than using SQL Server reports, if some of you are using that today. The next feature I think is important is the ability to schedule reports. So this is new. You'll see here down at the bottom of the page I have what's called My Job Queue. Basically, I can take any report, and rather than running it, I have a new choice here under Print. So I can still print it, send it to a PDF, Word, Excel, or I can schedule the report. Okay? When I schedule the report, I can decide when I want to run the report and how often I want to run that report. I can also create recurring reports saying, you know, run it every Monday. And there's a new web part on the role page that has your reports. So basically, if I say to run it every Monday, it'll pop up into my main role page and a little report inbox over here until I look at it. Once I've looked at it, it'll remove it from my inbox. It'll be in the history. You can choose unread reports or all reports, or just so you can always go back to reports that have been dumped into your inbox, but typically you'd be looking at the unread reports. So I can schedule a report to run once a week, every day of the week, at a particular time on a day, etc. Yes, yeah. So I'm deciding as part of that process who I'm sending that to. Let's take a look. I'll go into a little more detail here. So these are some of the choices when you're setting it up. Basically, who's the user? Okay, and then down here, whether I want to send it as a PDF, a Word, an Excel. Okay, and down here is the options for recurrence. You know, do I want it to run on Mondays? What time do I want it to start at? What time do I want it to end at? Etc. So if I said Monday started at 5 a.m., it would go into their inbox at 5 a.m. So the question was, is this through the NAV workflow or is this through an external application like email? That being said, one of the new features is the ability, some of you may be using a free download for NAV called Zetadocs to allow you to do a save and send today. That's still available. As a matter of fact, Zetadocs has a new edition, which I think is very powerful for the Word reports you just saw, to actually make that even easier than what I showed you, designing those Word reports, okay? But there is now, within Dynamics NAV, without Zetadocs, the ability to do a send of those documents. So here it's popping up a little box. The user's based on the setup in the database in terms of who it's going to, and what the attachment's going to be. I can choose to just send it, or I can say I want to edit it in Outlook. It'll show you what it's generated when it pops up in Outlook here in a sec. And basically, it sent the sales order confirmation with a PDF. Now, that could have been that Word report we designed that we said, you know, we want to use as our main report for our order confirmations. So very easy to adjust some of those reports. Okay, probably one of the next features I want to talk about is simplification. So a great deal of effort has gone into simplifying the user interface. This is a good example. This is called the small business role, and it uses what is called the mini forms. So if I were to look at, for instance, a customer in this particular role, you'll see the screen is actually quite a bit simpler than what you're used to. There's a lot less fields on it, okay? It's only sort of the key fields that the user needs. So throughout NAV, there's the concept of these mini forms. So there's 2 forms for customer. There's 2 forms for sales orders. When you're going through the small business interface, you're going to get those simpler forms, and you can obviously set up users to use one form or the other. And you can obviously modify those forms much like you can the standard NAV forms. But it's really a simpler starting point with some of the key fields that you might need. So I want to look at, for instance, a sales order, or an invoice will work. One of the other enhancements you'll notice is it used to be you would have to sort of print a report to see the total of your order, the total of your invoice. Okay, now directly within the form, you'll notice here I've got all the totaling information. Okay, so you can see the total amount of dollars for the order, the total sales tax for the order, all of that information directly within the form. No, this is the web. So for those of you who don't use Dynamics NAV today, you can access it through what's called the Windows client. So this is the Windows client. And there's actually a one-click client deployment now for the IT people. So any new user goes to a web page the IT person gives them. They tick a box and they say install. It's a much lighter, less complex install than the old Windows client used to be. There is also the web client. And the web client, I'm happy to say, is in 2015 is 4 times faster, using a quarter of the bandwidth. So a significant improvement in performance and functionality. Essentially, it's for the most part comparable to the Windows client now in terms of all the key functionality. Much simpler to manage from a deployment point of view for your IT guys, and also part of that concept of access it anywhere. So this is what the Windows client does. Another new feature is the tablet client. Okay, so if you go.
Have 1 second.
Yep.
For those that are popping in late on the World Wide Web, Trevor Moore is the presentation from Microsoft. He's presenting NAV 2015. We are in about 20 minutes on an hour presentation. So Trev's walking through the top 10 features on NAV 2015. A couple of them have been pretty good, Trev. Very impressed by it. And Trev will be going for about another 10 to 15 minutes, and then we'll be going through some of the other features within NAV. So welcome those that are coming in from across Canada and are just joining us. Go ahead, Trev.
Thanks, Tim. So since the question was asked by Mike, this is another interface. This is called the tablet interface. It's new for NAV 2015. You can go to the store on your iPad, your Android, or your Windows device and download this free application, okay? So it'll work on any of those, to whatever your salespeople are using, whatever your plant production people are using. One of the applications I see for this is your quality people walking around the shop floor with their tablets, entering their quality data. Every single screen and every single function available in NAV, period, is available on the tablet. So it's not a limited version, it's not a light version, it's not limited to certain screens. So as a tablet user, you'll see I have my role page, very similar role page. I have access to, all the main functions that I use from that role page, okay? I also have the ability to create a new sales quote, create a new sales order, create a return. Let's say I want to go in and create a new sales order. It's going to pop it up for me, and now I can create a new sales order. Okay, so really from anywhere, any way, any device, you can now use it. Okay, the next set of functionality also relates to that simplification. So you can now hide autofill number fields. So, when you go to an order, as an example, in NAV, you're creating, let's say, I'm on the simplified. Just going to search for it. I got to change users. I don't have access. So as we go to sales orders, a couple changes related to the simplification. You'll notice that there's an asterisk here to the left of the sales order customer number. That means that it's a required field. So you can now set any of the fields you want within your documents as required across Dynamics Nav. That's fairly simple to do. You can also set it up in the role so that the auto number fields are hidden, okay, meaning that a user doesn't see them because they're automatically generated. The way that happens is if you only have one number series on a document, the field's automatically hidden from all the users, okay? The other thing you can do is there's a concept of a quick create now. So let's say I go in and I want to create a new customer. Okay, I don't have that on my role, sorry. So I'm going to head back to the desktop here. I'm just going to go into the server. So this is within, this is a bit more technical, but this is, in NAV where you do customizations and you make changes. This here, I'm actually in the sales order document, and I'm looking at a field called description. If I wanted to make that field mandatory, the only thing I would need to do within here is tick into it, and simply there's a field called show mandatory, and I would simply change that to true, and I've made that particular field mandatory in the system. The other thing that relates to simplification, again, this is in the technical setup area. This is the service where I decide how I connect to Dynamics Nav. Down here, you have a field called UI Elements Removal. It's a very small field, but it has a very significant effect. So basically, when you set up a user's security, you decide what they have access to in NAV, okay? If I select to this license file and user permission, automatically it removes everything from the screens, all the screens the user can use that they don't have access to. So, if you want to make somebody's life real simple, take a receiver. Maybe you've only given them access to receive purchase orders and look up inventory. You don't want to do the work to create a bunch of role pages or pages specific to that receiver. Now you simply change this setting, and automatically when he goes into NAV, he doesn't see anything but the things he has access to. So a much simpler interface, much less complication, a lot less screens to sort of look at, navigate, wonder what they are. Used to be you'd click on them and say you don't have permission, you can't go in here. Now they're just gone, okay? So a very simple simplification. So let me illustrate maybe how that works. So I'm going to go ahead and you'll notice I never signed in. So that's one of the features that came in 2013 R2. Basically, I'm doing a single sign-on. So I've logged into this machine as my Office 365 user, could have been my domain user, and I'm authenticating using Active Directory into the web version, into the Windows client version. That's new in 2015. Used to not be able to do it. So I don't have to keep clicking in. I can log into my SharePoint. I can log into anything with the single sign-in. I'm going to another version of the one-click client that's set up for NAV authentication, okay, so that I can show you that feature we just talked about. So I'm going to log in with a user I created in NAV called Demo, and I give him access to nothing. Oh, lost me, Mike? Okay. So basically, I'm logging in, instead of using my Office 365 credentials, because I'm already logged in as somebody, I'm using a client that lets me log in with my NAV credentials. And I've created a user called Demo, and I gave him a security role called Foundation, which is nothing, okay? As I go in there, you'll see that even though he's got the sales order role assigned to him, so as I go in, one more time, I've only got a one-user license. So unfortunately, I won't be able to show that, but basically I would have logged in, and the guy, even though he had the sales order role, would have no screens, no menu items, no nothing. So it makes it a lot easier to sort of kick into exactly what they want. Another new change is the concept of item as a service. So today, when you're doing a sales order or an invoice or a purchase order, and you want to add a line that you're just entering against a GL account, you need to select type GL account. Now you can create items and make them a type service. And then when you're actually on the sales order document, the purchase order document, you can remove that column type. Don't need it anymore. You can select an item, and it's basically like an expense type item. It's got a different set of fields in the item master file that you can use. Yeah, that's an example. So a quick summary. The tablet app available now for the Android, the Apple, and the Windows device. So you can use NAV anywhere. So here's just some screenshot examples on different devices. You'll see it's the same user experience, very similar across all those devices. The concept of available anywhere. You can use the tablet, the web-based version. You can use the Windows one-click client version. embedded into Office 365 now, completely. So if you're using Office 365 and you're authenticating against that, you can smoothly post documents into SharePoint, things like that, directly through Dynamics NAV. And I just wanted to highlight a bit the roadmap over the last couple of years. So 2009 was where we introduced the RTC. We moved into some enhancements on that. In 2013, we started seeing the concept of in Office 365, some integration with Office 365, and on Azure. That evolution has continued in NAV 2015, and the concept of adapting to the mobile-first, cloud-first world has been enhanced in NAV 2015. So I'm going to pass it over to this stage. Thank you.
Trev,